Welcome to the next video in the Suggestion app course. This is a complete course where we'll build a .NET 6 Blazor server application with MongoDB from the ground up. There are three things you need to know before we get started. First, this is part of a series, and this isn't the first video in the series. If you're just starting out, you should check out the playlist that's linked in the description to start from the first video in the series. Second, this course is actually a paid course. MongoDB sponsored it so you can put the videos on YouTube for free. Check out the link in the description to sign up for MongoDB Atlas for free to thank them if you haven't already. Third, you can also buy this course on imtimcorey.com. The link is in the description. Buying this course will get you all the lessons right away, the source code for each lesson, a certificate of completion, offline access, and more. It also helps sponsor more free content. The video will be the same as it is on YouTube, so feel free to watch the free version if you want to. Okay, let's jump into today's video. Note there may be more than one lesson in this video, since some lessons are short. The first admin task we have to undertake that we have not yet done is the ability to archive entries. Now, on the main page, we're going to have a list of all the suggestions. And as an admin, it'd be great if the admin could come through and just say, hey, you know what? Just archive that. It's getting old. Archive that. They could do a filter and a sort if they want. And then from there, find the ones they're looking for and say archive, archive, archive. So we want to make this easy, but not overly easy. And we only want admins to be able to do this. So let's come down here to where we have the section down here for category name. So category name is that little entry in gray. Let's actually load this so you can see it. It's a little entry in gray that just says, dev questions or 10-minute training, whatever it is at the bottom. So courses, in-depth tutorial, other, and so on. We're going to put another entry on the right-hand side that says archive. And then on each of these, we'll have a little archive icon, but only if you're logged in as an admin, which means we probably should log in as an admin while we're here so we can get ready for this. We hit login. Okay, so we're an admin now. We want to see the archive entry show up in the lower right-hand corner. And it should match this courses. So let's cut this out temporarily. And then we're going to put an if statement in here. And the if statement, we're going to have to check for an entry called archiving suggestions, which we don't have yet. So let's come down here and we'll put it right here. Private suggestion model archiving suggestion. And this will track the suggestion that we're working on archiving. We will have a two-step process. We don't want to just hit the button and then have it archived because of the fact we can accidentally hit the button as we scroll, especially if we're using a tablet where our finger is both the mouse pointer and the scroll wheel. So that'd be bad if we bumped it. So we want to have a confirmation dialog. So we'll come back up here. We still have it cut out, and we're going to have if, and the if statement here, we will say archiving suggestion is null or archiving suggestion.id is not equal to s.id. Meaning, hey, if we're not currently archiving anything, or if we are archiving something, but it's not this ID, then just show some information. We'll have a div here, and we'll then have, nope, not a dialog, div. How about that? Yeah. You can try to mess me up, but I'm going to get you one of these days. So then we'll paste back in what we had before. So that will show up on the left-hand side. This div right here, we're going to have to style it. So class equals suggestion entry bottom. And the first thing we'll have is our div for our suggestion entry for a category. And actually, I think this div right here was supposed to be this div right here. So let's get rid of the extra div we now have. That's why we had it. Oops. I was trying to think ahead and didn't. Okay, so now we need to put in the archive button, but we don't want it to show all the time. So we create an authorize view that's going to check the policy to make sure it has an admin policy. So only if you're an admin will this section show up. Button on click equals arrow archiving suggestion equals, not double equals, single equals S. And what this will do is it will put the current suggestion into the archiving suggestion, which means the archiving suggestion will no longer be null, and the ID will match the current suggestion ID. Therefore, this if will no longer show. Or the values in the if will no longer show. This is a button, and we need to give it some classes. But first, we'll say archive. And the classes here will be btn and suggestion entry text category and btn-archive. Yep, it's a little long. Can't help that. So there is our archive button, and that'll be in the authorized view. Now, this is an if statement. Let's go to the else. And here, we're going to have a div just like this with a suggestion entry bottom. And we'll have our closing div. And in this div, we're going to have two buttons. So button, let's do a class first. Class equals btn-btn-archive and btn-archive-confirm. And we'll have an on click equal to archive suggestion, which you don't have yet. No worries. We'll get there. And we're going to confirm. This is going to confirm. Let's copy this. We'll paste it down below. This will be archive-reject. And the on-click will be a little bit different. It's going to be our open and close parens. We're going to have an arrow. And we're going to say that archiving suggestion equals null. Again, single equals. What that will do is it will it'll overwrite the archiving suggestion to say it's null, which, by the way, is going to then make the if true. Therefore, this will show instead of this. So when you click on the archive button in here, it's going to make this false. Therefore, it'll show this instead. The confirm and not confirm and confirm, confirm and cancel. And if you hit the cancel button in here, it's going to make the if true and show this instead. If you hit confirm, we're going to call the archive suggestion method. And what is that method? I'm glad you asked. Let's come down here and we'll just put it right here. Private async task archive suggestion. So what do we do here? We set the archiving suggestion.archived equal to true. That's the property on the object. So this is a normal suggestion, but we've now marked the archived value to true. We're going to await suggestion data Update suggestion with the archiving suggestion. Suggestions.remove the archiving suggestion. And archiving suggestion equals null. And then await filter suggestions. So we will, after we've archived something, filter the list again, which will include going back to the database to get a new copy. So we may get the cached copy. We may have to work through that, but I think that the filter suggestion should, let me just check. Filter suggestion, I believe, will get all approved suggestions. We'll have to see if that's going to conflict with our timing issue. If it does, where it's not pulling the new version, then what we'll do is we'll either invalidate the cache and start over, or what we'll do is we'll not filter this list. And if we don't filter this list, what will happen is, since we removed it from the suggestions list, it'll just disappear. Now, others will see it temporarily, but once the minute passes, they won't see it either. I think that's probably the best option, so I'll leave this commented out. And what will happen is this suggestion that you archived will just disappear. In theory, if you were to refresh the page before the cache has been reloaded, you will see the suggestion again. But that's a really small window there, and it's not something I'm overly worried about. With that, the only thing we have left to do is we have to style this. So we have entered this suggestion entry bottom. So let's go to our CSS and say, wow, that was not it. How would I copy that again? There we go. And we say display is flex. Now we also have in here the btn archive, which both of these are as well down here. So let's apply that as well, or style that. And btn-archive is going to have a border of 0, background color of white, padding of 0, and 10 pixels. And then flex will be unset. And then we're going to have the confirm and reject. So we'll just do that right now. btn-archive. I thought I copied that. Evidently not. btn-archive-confirm and comma btn-archive-reject. And we'll have text transform is uppercase. Color, we'll use a dark gray. We use UZ4. I believe it's A9. We have to check to make sure that. The font family is going to be the Montserrat. And fallback of sans serif. The font weight is going to be bold, or 700. Font size is going to be 0.8 rem. And the flex is going to be 1. Now, that will apply for everything in both of these, but the color we're going to change for one of them. That's the btn-archive-confirm. And for this one, we're going to say the color is E9354C. So it'll override this color, but just for confirm. We could have a separate class just for reject that had the dark gray color in it. I think this is fine though. And I think that's all of our CSS. Let's see how this archive button works. So it should show up in the lower right-hand side of our entries. And there we go. We have an archive button. If we mouse over and click on it, we'll see confirm. Notice it's in red. If we mouse over, it turns black. But that kind of indicates, hey, that's kind of a big deal. Are you sure you want to hit confirm? Because if you hit confirm, that's going away. So we can come down here and look and see, is there anything else we want to do? We hit cancel, nothing happens. If we archive, let's archive this one down here. Notice if we hit archive down here, this one's no longer archiving. But I want to know more about Redis. Well, we're going to archive that. And it's gone. It's no longer here. Let's archive this top one as well, awaiting upvote. It's been archived. Now let's go to our profile, archive suggestion. There we go. So an archive suggestion, a pending suggestion, a rejected suggestion. No approved suggestions anymore. So that's how archive works. If we log out, wait for it, the archive goes away. We can't archive anymore. So it's only if we're logged in as an administrator that we can archive our entries. And there is no way to get to that page somehow and do it ourselves. It's just not possible because we're not an admin. All right, so that's how we're going to archive suggestions. We still have more to do as an admin though in upcoming videos. So let's close this out and get ready for the next admin task. We now need to allow the admin to update the status of any suggestion. And we're going to break this apart into 3 different sections so we can cleanly work on each. The first section we're going to work on is the code to support this. So let's go to the detail page because that's where we're going to allow the admin to set a status. They go to the details of a suggestion and they can set the status from there. So we're going to end up doing it as a third section right below this. But we're going to start by writing the code for it. And to do that, we need to bring in some extra stuff. Now let's move this one down. I like to have them, these are our entries together. We need one more. Inject status data, because we need to bring in the additional data for what statuses are available to us in order to then allow the user or allow the admin to choose which status to apply. Okay, down in the code section, which we're going to concentrate in this lesson, we're going to add a few more things here. Let's create a new kind of section here. We're going to have a private list of status model called statuses. We're also going to need to have 2 strings. Private string setting status, and that will let us know which status we're setting, or that we're setting a status for one of them. And then we'll also have a private string URL text. And this will only be for the completed status where the admin can enter a URL where the completed suggestion has been created from. Like there's a video for it, there's a course for it, there's a podcast episode for it, whatever it is. Now, the next step is going to be we need to fill in the statuses. So in the uninitialized async, we can have statuses equals await status data dot get all statuses. And that will load our statuses for us. And now we need to have only one more method in here, and that's the completion. So what we'll do is we'll say, hey, if you click on a status, we're going to set that status as the one being modified, and you can commit to it, or you can reject it, or cancel it. But it's not until you say commit to applying the status that will actually apply the status, and that will be a method called private async task complete set status. And we're going to have a switch here on setting status. and we'll have a case for completed. I always like to add break at the end so that I don't forget it. And we're going to have an if statement here. If string is null or white space, URL text, then return. Because you have to have a URL in there in order to continue on. If you're marking this as completed, then it needs to have a URL of where that is. Suggestion.suggestion status equals statuses where s arrow s dot status name to lower equals setting status dot to lower, like so, and we'll grab the first one. Now, this will throw an exception if there isn't one that matches the one the status we're trying to set. But that's okay because of the fact that if it doesn't match one, that means we're somehow setting a bad status. So we want this to crash. So that's our first one. They're not very hard after that, but we do need to set owner notes. So suggestion.owner notes. I'm going to copy and paste this because it's long. I'll explain it, but that way you don't have to watch me type it all out. See, told you it's long. Let me zoom out here. I know normally I zoom in, but we can see the whole thing on the screen if we zoom out a little bit. So that's owner notes, and I have string interpolation. In the note says, you're right, this is an important topic for developers. We create a resource about it here. And it's going to have a URL with the URL text as the href, as well as the actual text inside the anchor tag. And the target is blank. That means that it'll open a new tab. So that's just some boilerplate text that the admin doesn't need to fill out. It'll just fill out automatically and say, hey, you're right, that was a great suggestion, and here is the completion of that. So we could change this later. We might even allow us to come from a database or something like that. But for now, for version 1, perfect. Really simple. Let's copy the whole thing, but we can get rid of the if. So I'll copy the whole thing, and I'll tab us back. And this, instead of completed, is watching. And again, we'll get rid of the if statement. The if statement is only for completed, since that's the only one where we have the URL being used. Watching, this text right here doesn't change. So it's only the owner note that changes. And I'll grab that and show you. Copy it. And we don't even need string interpolation. So there's the note. It's just a quick note to say, we notice the interest in the suggestion. If more people are interested, we'll address the topic. Instead of we will address the topic, we may address the topic. So we talked about the fact that we didn't want to say will, we'll say may, because these are suggestions and that's great, but we're not going to say, hey, we're locked into, we have to do this. Otherwise, we may have something that just doesn't fit. Upcoming, same kind of thing. I'll copy and paste the note there. And this is just great suggestion. We have a resource in the pipeline to address this topic. That's for upcoming. And then we'll grab one more, and that's dismissed. And we will paste in the owner note for that. Sometimes a good idea doesn't fit within the scope, our scope and vision. This is one of those ideas. So if you come in and say, hey, I want to see you do the Java master course. That's a great idea. It doesn't fit in the scope and vision of what we want to do. Therefore, we're not going to do that. So, it's a good suggestion in the fact that it's a valid suggestion, but it's just not in our scope. Now, some of those dismissed ones will actually be ones where we're like, no, we're just not going to do that. But yeah, those are the statuses there. And just to be clear here, dismissed is not rejected. Rejected is when we say, hey, this is a homework question, or this is in some way not a valid suggestion. But dismissed is where maybe it's a valid suggestion, but it's not in the scope of what I'm going to do. So again, Java is a good example, or maybe you might say even Angular, React, or Vue. Well, right now, that's not in the scope and vision of what I want to do. Maybe in the future will be. But for now, it's not. Therefore, we'll probably dismiss it. And then we also have the default, which is just return. So that's the switch settings. Once we have got to this point, notice we return here and we return here. So it has to be valid. But if it's valid, you'll get these two properties set in each of these. And then we'll come down here and we're going to say setting status equals null. And then we will await suggestion data dot update suggestion for suggestion. So that will modify the suggestion in the database. So that's all the code there is for completing the set status. We're not going to allow the admin to modify these statements. I don't think that's necessary at this point. I think for version 1, we just have set statements, some boilerplate stuff, because we want these statuses to be quick to do. And quite frankly, I have a small team. So it's not like I have a dedicated set of people who are going to be going in and changing statuses. I have one person who's not even part-time job will be able to do this. He'll be a, when you get time, Tom, see if he can do that. So that's the kind of stuff where I want this to be quick rather than have lots and lots of detail. It'd be great if we could fully interact on every suggestion. It'd be great if we could fully interact in every YouTube comment. We just don't have time. So we're going to try and keep this as focused as possible in order to get to as many suggestions as possible. So with that, that's all the code we need to support the setting of the statuses from an admin perspective. In the next video, we'll wire up the HTML for this. Let's add our HTML, which right up here we have the if not suggestion status null, and if the suggestion status is not null, then do this. That's going to apply or show the suggestion status for this suggestion. But now below this, we want another if statement first of all. If suggestion is not null, just making sure that we actually have a suggestion. We should. There's no way we should be on this page without a valid suggestion, but just in case we are, for whatever reason, we're checking that. Now inside here, we have authorize view with a policy equal to admin. So this is only for admins. And inside here, we're going to have a div with a class. We'll put the classes in now. Row, justify, content center, and detail form. So that is our first div. And inside there, we're going to have a div with a class equal to column extra large 8 and a column large of 10, form layout, and admin details. That's our first custom class right there. Inside there, we'll have another div that inside of it will have class equals suggestion detail status, font weight of bold, margin bottom of 2, suggestion detail suggestion, like so, and we'll say set status. Now we're going to have an if statement. If string.is null or white space on setting status. Remember, we're going to we're going to toggle this string to say, hey, we're setting this status right now. So right now it starts off as null or white space. And we're going to show the statuses they could set. Div class equals admin set statuses. Inside of here, we have to close our div here manually because we're inside an if statement and that doesn't like that. Button on click. And this is going to be a open and close paren, our arrow, and then setting status equals, single equals, completed. Like so. And notice that we have these quotes and that doesn't work real well. But here's a little trick. Put the @ symbol in front of your parens. And then it works. What this symbol is, normally the @ symbol on a Blazor page like this indicates like this, that it indicates, okay, now we're doing C# stuff. It's the identifier for the Razor syntax. And yes, it's Razor syntax on a Razor component, which is a Blazor page. Wow, that's confusing. But the @ symbol normally references this is C# code. But in here, inside the quotes that's already C# code, the @ symbol is the string identifier that says, hey, everything in here is just text. There is no escape characters. It's just text. So this allows us to have single quotes inside and it be cool. Now the coloring is a little bit off. No worries there. Next line, without closing button, class equals btn-suggestion entry text category. We're reusing classes here. btn-archive, which we probably should name it something better because it's not archiving, it's assigning a status, but it's using the archive tag. And btn-status-completed. And that actually is a new one. And then we'll say in here, the text will be completed. That's the actual button text. So this is one button, and it just sets the text string value to be completed for setting status. Remember, we're checking setting status to see if it's null or white space. And if it is, we're displaying this. But once we set it to completed, it's no longer null or white space. We'll get to what the other half of that is in just a minute. But first, let's paste a few more. Let's zoom this text back in, by the way. I had zoomed it out. Sorry about that. I had zoomed it out in order to show you the whole thing, and then I forgot to zoom back in. There you go. Maybe you can read it a little better now. Sorry about that. So there is our first div with a button inside of it. We need 3 more. There's 1, 2, 3. So this one here is watching. This one down here is upcoming. And this one is dismissed. And we need to take these values and put them other places. So for example, btn-status-watching, btn-status-upcoming, and btn-status-dismissed. We should also say dismissed in here, upcoming, and watching. So I believe that's all of the changes that need to happen for those buttons. That gives us the sections we need. And actually, you know what? I place all in divs. They don't all need to be in divs. Just the overall wrap the whole thing. So let's delete the divs. There we go. Now you have just the buttons in the divs. Cool. Much better. So now we have the if side where the setting status is null, but we need to know what happens if we have a different status. So let's go with an else, and it's actually an else if. So setting status equals completed. Now, why completed only? Well, because of the fact that completed has a little bit extra compared to all the rest. We have a div with an input. Oh, I forgot. Let's do our /div, escape it out. There we go. Input bind equals URL text. That was that string I created down below. And then we're going to have a class equal to form control and rounded control. The type equals text. And we should probably go to the next line by now because we still have more to go. The placeholder equals search. And that placeholder should not say search. That should say, that's a holdover from the other page. This should say, how about just URL? And the ARIA label, since it doesn't have a label, we'll give it an ARIA label, equals content URL. And we'll close that out. So that's our input. And then we need to have, and we'll reuse a class here, div class equal to suggestion entry bottom. And then I will close this since, again, it didn't. And then inside here, we can say button. And actually, this button is going to look an awful lot like what we have for the index page. So the index page, and go look at the these buttons right here. So let's grab these from our entry bottom, and we'll come over to details, and we'll paste them in. I'm going to put them on 2 lines so you can see them more easily. And then we're also going to change the on-click events, but it's going to be the confirm and reject. And it's the same thing we'll say, or confirm and cancel. So it's the same setup there, but for confirm, what we'll do is we'll have a simpler complete set status. And for the reject, we're going to set the status or setting status to null. So that's, we don't have to do the archive. We don't say just btn and btn-archive-reject. Those are the 2 things we need to do, not the btn archive itself. So yeah, I probably could have just retyped that, but there is our confirm and reject for the completed. All right. And then we'll also have one more else. And this else is a copy of just this. So that will be just show the confirm or cancel, because if it's completed, we have to have that URL at the top, but otherwise we just need to have a confirm or cancel for applying that status. And that's all the HTML there is in order to get this to work. So we're pretty close on seeing this, but we want to make sure we get the classes first and get those right before we run this. Just make sure it looks right. Okay, so that's coming up next. This is the last step in the statuses section, which is adding the styling to it. So let's start off by looking through and finding the classes that we need to add. So admin details, that's a new one. So let's come down here. Admin details. And in here, we're just going to say margin top is 20 pixels. And yes, that's a set size. That's what I found works. We could come back and try rems and play around with it, but this works for now. And then we come back over to, let's close out index. Come back over here and we look for the next thing, which is admin set statuses, I believe. And we set these statuses. So display is going to be flex, justify contents is space evenly. What it's going to do is it's going to have all of the different statuses in one row, and then it's going to break them up into columns. So each status gets its own column, and it's going to evenly space them so that they're not just crunched up together, but they take up as much space as possible in an even manner. And then we want the flex wrap to wrap. So if we don't have enough room for all of our statuses, it's going to wrap to the next line and again space them evenly. So it's a pretty intelligent thing. And then down here we have all of this done. So we only need to worry about these. This is the btn status completed. We're not going to give it a main setting, meaning we're not going to just style this, we're going to style the hover only. And this will have a color for the completed of B5D43A. So we'll do this for the other types. So watching, upcoming, and dismissed. Watching, upcoming, and dismissed. And for watching, our code is E9354C. For upcoming, it is 835581. And for dismissed, it is B9C30B. There are our colors, and that's all the styling we need to do. So let's log in here and see what this looks like when we go to change the status for something. Now we have to be logged in as an admin to even see this. So right now we're not logged in. If we come here, there is no section down here, there's no entry. Let's go to login. And I'll log in. I'll hit sign in. And now let's go to our first suggestion here, click on it, and we have the set status. So I can say watching. Let's confirm that. Now it says watching, and it has a little note here. We could say, it's actually upcoming. Confirm that, now it's upcoming. Notice you mouse over these, it's green, red, purple, and a different color green it looks like. Looks like dismissed and completed are the same color. Let's go back to, let's go to dismissed. Dismissed should be a yellow, and it's actually a green, so that was wrong, it looks like. Let's just grab that color. F12, go to inspect, and that should be F9C30B. So let's look at what it actually is. That should be correct. Let's here we can zoom out a little bit because it's way too big. So this should have, let's select the hover event. And now it should have B9, which we said that no, it should be what? It should be F9C30B. So instead of F, I put B. Well, we can fix that. Let's close this out, and I'm just going to go over here and change it. So it should be F9 right here. Let's hit save. And it didn't refresh but if we hit refresh, it should update. There we go. Dismissed is now yellow. So always good to check, but these correspond to the actual colors that we applied. If I hit completed here, I have to put a URL in, and I will put iamtimcorey.com. Confirm, and now we're completed, and completed doesn't have a color. That's interesting. Let's go back to our first suggestion. Yes, it's green here. Why is it not green here? A little bit of debugging again. Hit F12, and let's look at this section right here. It's been marked as suggestion detail status completed. Cool. So why do we not have an entry for that? Let's find out why. Suggestion detail status completed. Let's look for that in our CSS. And we'll search just this document. And we'll paste that in. We don't find it. Let's find the other ones. Ah, I said complete instead of completed. Hit save on that. Come back over here. Hit refresh. There we go. It's always good to test these things out. But notice that you click on this, it's going to open in a new page. Cool. It's all good. So that is the set status admin. Now, this is only visible if you're an admin. If you're not an admin, you don't get to set the status. Okay, so that's the process for admins. There's 3 different spots to do admin type stuff. One is the main page where we can archive things. If we want to get something off a list, we just archive it and say, hey, that's been sitting for a while and no one's really interacting with it. We'll get rid of it. Get rid of it is a harsh word. We're going to archive it saying it's just not getting enough traction. Now, if we say, hey, we want to watch something or mark something that's completed, we'll go into the status and set that on the detail page. If we want to approve or reject new submissions, we go to the admin section where we can approve or suggest things. And that's the process for being an admin. And that's really all of the work that we can do on a site. The site is essentially at this point complete. Now, it's complete for desktop only. We still have to style it for tablets, for small tablets, for phones of different sizes, and make sure that it works well. And it doesn't yet, but it will. So we're going to do that next. We're going to do the styling, and then we'll do some code cleanup and test the site and so on.